it's Affy, and today I am here to do my July wrap up. Um, I read 6 books last month, so a few less than I usually read, but still a good amount. I had a good reading month. Pretty much all the books I read were, I think there might have been one 3-star, but I had mostly 4 stars and a few 5 stars. So, good reading month overall. But let me just hop right into it. So, the first book I read in July was How to Forget a Duke by Vivian Lorette. I gave this book 4 stars. Looking back, maybe I'd give it a 3.5 because I did have some issues with it. So, this book is about, sorry, I'll just put it up for you to see. This book is about Jacinda. She is a matchmaker and she is looking into Crispin, who is a duke that's looking for a wife. And he's been really sketchy. When she tries to ask him questions about himself, he won't really answer. And Jacinda has this thing where she just has this itch to just figure everything out. Like she has this need to get to the bottom of things. And so when he won't answer her questions, she starts snooping around. First she snoops around in his desk and then she gets caught and he's like, okay, this lady's crazy. She's snooping around my house. And then she does something even crazier. She decides she's going to go all the way up to his house in the country and find out what he's hiding there. So she goes by boat and she ends up crashing and ends up having amnesia. And so this book is basically her with amnesia, trying to figure out why she's there and what his secret is, but not really knowing that she's trying to figure out what his secret is. It's weird. It's a crazy plot. I've never read anything with amnesia in it before, so that part was definitely interesting. I kind of liked it. I would say I like the amnesia trope, at least as far as this book is concerned. It made things really funny. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. The reason I say maybe I'd give it 3.5 looking back is because it did kind of get annoying the way that she constantly was snooping around, even with her amnesia. Her personality is still her personality. So she can't help herself. She's always sneaking around the house and trying to find things. And it just kind of got to the point where it was like, girl, please stop. Like, Curious George, you can't just be sneaking around people's houses all the damn time. Like, you need to find other things to do with yourself. Also, while it made sense, he was pretty annoyed with her throughout the majority of the book. And again, it makes sense. She's obnoxious and constantly digging through his stuff. But he spent the majority of the book just being annoyed by her, lusting after her, but being annoyed by her. And so it was just this weird thing going on with the two of them. It felt like they didn't really connect until maybe like the last third of the book. And then they kind of started to really have like feelings for one another. But the first 2/3 of the book was just him being annoyed, her sneaking around. Yeah, it it was okay. Now that I'm thinking back, it was okay. I'd probably drop it down to a 3.5. It had some very funny parts, and his aunt is a very, very funny lady. She shows up at some point in the book. But yeah, it was good, but it wasn't great, I guess, now that I'm looking back on it. So, yeah, it was still a good introduction to Vivian Lorette. I've never read her before. I'm reading all entirely new authors for this month, but she was a new author for me from last month. I think the only new author that I read last month. So it was cool to kind of look into her writing and see kind of what her writing style is like. And she's a good writer. I just feel like the story itself, while it was definitely funny, had a lot of issues. So yeah, 3.5/ 4 stars. So the second book that I read in July was Married by Morning by Lisa Kleypas. And I love this book. I love this book so much. I gave this book 6 stars. So this book is about Leo Hathaway. He is the big brother of the Hathaways, and Kat, who is kind of the governess for the Hathaway sisters. She is the governess for his 2 youngest sisters. And so they obviously spend time around each other. And he's always kind of made fun of her, and she's always just been kind of around him. Like, she finds him obnoxious and annoying, and she can't stand him, and he just loves that he can rile her up. So throughout all the other books, they've just kind of been at each other's necks, and this is finally their story. And this book I found to be so funny, so charming. There were definitely some scary moments in here. It was just a very well-rounded story, I feel like. So, in this book, we have Kat and Leo, like I said. They find themselves at a crossroads one day where they're arguing and something happens and they kiss each other. They kind of get caught up one day while they're out hiking somewhere, and she ends up saving him. And so he's kind of starting to have feelings for her. He's like, all right, maybe she isn't as bad as I thought she was. Maybe she's actually a cool person. But Kat has a lot of things that she is hiding as far as her past goes. She's very secretive, and it seems like, at least to them, that she's hiding from something. And so he's kind of trying to figure out what her secrets are. And, you know, she's doing her best to keep them to herself. But it gets to the point where he starts to really love her and want to be with her. And while she feels the same, she keeps refusing him. So he starts doubling down his efforts to get her to want him and get her to marry him. And it's just so cute. I really, really enjoyed this book. So Leo is hilarious. Leo is so funny. He's probably my favorite Hathaway, to be honest. He's so sarcastic, but at the same time, he's always got a quip. He's always got something smart ass to say. And it just, like, I was just cracking up throughout the book. And she just, you know, she had her moments as well where she'd kind of throw it back at him. But as a whole, they're just funny together. He's super affectionate. He's a very affectionate man. He would like kiss her on the nose and, you know, things like that. I feel like in this book there wasn't too much going on with the rest of the family. In some of the other books, it's very heavy with not just the couple, but also the other members of the family. In this book, it felt like it was mostly just about the two of them. Of course, there were the other family members in the book, but they didn't kind of crowd and overtake. I felt like in some of the other books, they kind of overtook the story of the couple. That wasn't the case in this book. And then there's Dodger, who is the family ferret, and Dodger is so, so funny, and he kind of saves the day in the end. Dodger is so hilarious. This book was just fun. It was lots of fun. It had its scary moments. It had like some crazy, crazy stuff happen towards the end, but as a whole, this was a really, really fun one. So 6 stars, for me at least. This was a 6-star read. So the next book that I read in July was The Duke's Stolen Bride. This is by Sophie Jordan. This is about Marion and Nate is a duke. Marion is the eldest daughter of a family who they've lost their parents, and they're all girls. So 3 girls with no parents to take care of them. They're basically as poor as can be. They are poor as sin and can barely afford food. So they are really, really struggling. And there is a man in town who is quite a sleaze, who is trying his best to get Marion to marry him so that, he can take care of her family. But she doesn't want to marry this guy again. He's a sleaze. He's clearly doing what he's doing for nefarious reasons. And so she's trying her best to kind of hold out. And so one day she decides that she's going to become a courtesan. And she goes to the local lady in town who she knows was a courtesan. This woman doesn't talk about it, but everyone in town knows that she was a courtesan. And so she goes to her and asks her for advice on how to become one. And the lady gives her advice, but she's like, you can't fall in love with the people that you sleep with. Like, you just have to make sure that you don't do that. Client is going to be the Duke. And so she and the Duke start doing the do. And yeah, sparks start to fly. I'm sorry. I'm trying to remember all the things. There was a lot of sex scenes in this. There was a lot of scenes. But I mean, again, courtesan, so it kind of made sense. He kind of realizing what's going on, he takes it upon himself to start helping them out here and there in ways that he can. But she's kind of in this place where she doesn't really, she's feels like she's training with him. She's not really asking him for lots of money yet. So he's just bringing them food, bringing them stuff to keep them, afloat, to help with their debts and things like that. And then one day the sleazy guy shows up and he threatens to tell the whole town what she's doing with the... It's a good one. I enjoyed it. I gave this one 4 stars. My only issue with this book was that they basically fell in love in like 2 weeks. And I was like, really? Come on now. That's too short of a time, I feel like. For all of that to happen and then for them to be like, I love you. And I mean, they spent time together, but it didn't feel like tons of time was spent with them like truly getting to know each other. A lot of their time spent together was doing the do. So yeah, that was my 1 or 2 issues with the book. But as a whole, I enjoyed it. I really like Sophie Jordan's writing. Her stories are always really fun, to me at least. So the next book I read was Maya Banks. This is Highlander Most Wanted. And this book I gave 5 stars. This book made me cry. Both of her books so far in this series have made me cry. The first book made me cry, and this book also made me cry, although I cried a bit harder reading this book than I did the first one. And I'll explain why. So we have Genevieve, who is so sweet, but she's just gone through a lot. We have Genevieve, and then we have Bowen Montgomery, and he is the brother of the Laird from the first book. They've taken over this land. The old Laird ran away. His son had basically been abusing all these people. Bowen gets basically asked by his brother to take over as temporary Laird in the meantime until they can figure out what to do with this clan. He's staying there and he meets a woman, Genevieve, who she's scarred on one side of her face. She's been slashed with a knife and there's like a scar going down one side of her face. Everyone there hates her, like the entire clan just seem to hate her, and he can't figure out why. And he later learns that she was kidnapped by the Laird's son and raped repeatedly by him for over a year. The whole clan thinks that she was purposefully his whore, and instead of giving her grace, they condemned her. The women were just horrible to her. The men ignored her or leered at her. So she's just not living a good life at all. And Bowen basically is the only person that truly sees her and, feels for her. And so he is just so sweet to her. He's the only person that she feels like she can trust. And so they start to have a bond. They grow a bond. And this book was just, it was so sad in a lot of ways because the whole time she's there, she's just treated horribly. There ends up being a little war happening. A fight breaks out, and she is very skilled with a bow and arrow, and she takes some folks out, and that was a really cool scene. But yeah, she goes through it. She really goes through it in this book, and by the end of it, she gets her happy ever after. And I think that's what made me cry in the end, was how much she went through and how things ended for her on such a positive note, because she is technically the laird to her own clan. And she was kidnapped, so they didn't even know that she was still alive. Yeah, this book was amazing. It was very heartfelt, very just, yeah, the ending made me cry like 2 or 3 times. So yeah, I gave the last book 5 stars. I gave this book 5 stars. Like, I'm just really loving this series. So yeah, Highlander Most Wanted. So the next book I read was When a Duke Loves a Woman. This is the second book in the Sins for All Seasons series. This is by Lorraine Heath. This book was amazing. I feel like Lorraine Heath is becoming one of my new favorite authors. I really like the first book in this series. I think I gave it 4 stars. This book was amazing. This book was so good. We have Gilly and Thorn, or, well, he's the Duke of Thornley, but he goes by Thorn. So Gilly is the sister of Mick, who is in the first book, and they're called the True Loves. So Gilly Truelove, and she owns a bar. And one day Gilly is closing up at her bar, just behind in the alley somewhere. She's closing everything up, taking the trash out, and she hears a scuffle going on and finds a couple guys trying to rob somebody. And so she shouts them off. They run away, and she goes to find Thorn, who has been stabbed by these guys. So she drags him home, basically. She's like, he's just stumbling all over the place, but she gets him to her house and she nurses him back to health. He sees her. At first he thinks it's a guy, and then he realizes it's a woman, and he just becomes enthralled with her. He thinks she's an angel while he's asleep, because he's having these weird dreams. So he thinks she's like his guardian angel. So when he finally wakes up, he's just kind of enthralled with her, and come to find out that he was meant to be married that day, but the woman he was supposed to marry had run off, and left him standing at the altar. And so he asks her, do you mind helping me find my bride? Apparently she ran away into the neighborhood that Gilly lives in. Gilly is like, sure, I'll help you try to find her. And so they start spending all this time together looking for his bride. This story just becomes so sweet. They're so beautiful together. I had so many notes for this one, because I just was like, oh, they're so wonderful together. And Gilly's such a crazy cool character. I really love Gilly. She's awesome. Her brothers were so cool. The True Love brothers are hilarious. He starts showing up at her bar and helping out, even though he's a duke. People are just kind of like, why do you have a duke helping at your bar? Like, what is going on? And she's like, I can't stop him. He wants to be here. He wants to help. Like, I'm not gonna send him away if he wants to come and help. But he's just so into her, and it's just sweet. They have these moments where he would walk her home after work and just sit with her on the stairs in front of her house and just like hold hands and look at the stars, and just like beautiful stuff like that, where it was just so cute. It just, I don't know what else to say. This was a really, really, really good book. I'm thoroughly loving this series. The first book was so good as well. This book is really good. I'm looking forward to the next book, which is supposed to be about his bride who ran away and one of her brothers. Apparently they knew each other or were each other's first love or something. So I'm really looking forward to that book as well. But this one really, really did something to my heart. It pulled my heartstrings. So, yeah, this series is great. If you haven't read it, you should. It is so good. So I do have a few quotes from that book that I wanted to read just because I I liked it so much. I had a few quotes that I took down. So one is so she says, if you are aware, if you do anything untoward, I will kill you. And he goes, I can think of nothing I'd like more than to gaze into your eyes before I die. um, and then another one, he says, Dear God, you're like kindling, aren't you? The lightest touch and you burn. And she says, well, you're a powerful match. So the last book that I read in July was Amanda Quick. This is Ravished. And I had heard a lot of good things about this book, so I was really looking forward to it. I gave this 5 stars. This book was very fun, very funny. There was a lot going on in this book. Like, I went to write down the synopsis and I was like squeezing in as much as I could because there was just so much that happened in this book. So we have Harriet and Gideon. And Harriet is is it paleontologist, I think? She's obsessed with fossils. And there are some caves near her home that she likes to go to and just kind of tinker around. She gets her hammer and she goes in there and she looks for fossils. And one day she finds a whole bunch of loot that's being stashed there. And so Gideon, who is the Viscount of the land, basically his family owns that land. She goes to him to tell him, there are people that are using the caves to stash loot. So somebody's clearly stealing and bringing all their loot here and hiding it. He agrees to help her basically catch the people who are doing it. And she's doing it for her own reasons. She wants her fossils to be safe. She's worried that, somebody might come in and see the fossil that she's found and, somebody else might discover what she's discovered and take it. So that's her main reason for wanting these people out of there. Well, they finally do catch the guys who are robbing and bringing all their stuff to the caves. But unfortunately, she gets kidnapped and drawn into the situation. And by the time they've gotten these guys and, he's finally found her, the tide has come in. They're stuck in the cave together and she's basically ruined. So the next day he asks her to marry him. Because that's what you do back then. When you ruin a woman, you marry her. And the story goes on from there, and it is interesting. There's a lot that happens in this book. There's some hilarious scenes with some guy at a ball and her trying to beat the dude up. Like, it's so funny, and there's like so much going on in this book that it cracks me up. I wish I had the version with the step back, because her step backs are always so entertaining. There'll be like a picture of a guy with a knife fighting some other dude in the corner, and then there'll be another picture of like a stallion riding at the bottom, and then there'll be the couple in the middle. And I was like, damn, I wonder what it would have looked like on this book. Like, I wonder what the step book or a step back would look like in this book, based off of like all the scenarios and things that happen in the book. Yeah, this book was a lot. This book was a lot. I really liked Harriet. She was spunky and spicy. This girl had a lot to say, and at times she could be a bit annoying, to be honest. There was one or two times where I was like, come on, Harriet, like, come on. Like, just be an adult, you know? Like, there were times where she could just be a little ridiculous, but Gabriel, he loved her, as crazy as she was, as obsessed as she is with fossils. Like, this girl is obsessed with fossils. Like, that's all she thinks about is her damn fossils. And, you know, Gabriel at times, he really put up with it pretty well, but at times he'd be like, is that all you think about? And I'm like, yes, that is all she thinks about. That is all she thinks about, is her fossil tooth. And so yeah, I had, this book cracked me up quite a few times. And I love that. For me, I love a good funny book. So those are all the books that I read for July. If you guys have read any of these books, let me know what you thought about them. Or even just what you yourself are reading right now. Let me know in the comments if there are any good books that you think that I should check out from some of these writers, especially Lorraine Heath, because I'm really, really enjoying her writing right now. Give me some ideas and leave them down in the comments below. Otherwise, if you've made it this far into the video, leave me a giraffe. No, leave me a ferret or a rat emoji. I don't know if there's a ferret emoji, but if there's a rat emoji, I'll take that, because of Dodger from Married by Morning. I'm just thinking of Dodger. He's so cute. Anyways, if you've made it to the end of the video, leave me that emoji and leave me some comments. Let me know what you're reading, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.